Tara, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. So excited to finally be able to launch this amazing program. So happy that we have a state and a governor who really do think about a stronger and fair New Jersey and look at that through the lens of cannabis. I'm going to give you a high-level overview about what we're actually doing at EDA and the two programs that we're launching. The objective for this is to utilize a state appropriation to create a pilot program. And I'm going to say pilot a couple times because this is the first time we're doing this. And our goal is to get more resources after it's successful to support new businesses in the cannabis industry for their startup and operational costs during the first 3 years of operation. This is a pilot program that's open to conditional and annual license holders with a focus on social equity. Next slide. So one of the things that we did throughout the course of the year was host a number of listening sessions from practitioners that were actually in the field of cannabis. We wanted to understand what the barriers were, but also what the costs were. The cost can range anything from $500,000 to $10 million, depending on what type of license you have and what type of business you're actually going into. Next slide. What are the other barriers to entry? Again, the business plan as you're putting your application together, your 10+ SOPs, and also the intensive licensing process. On the real estate side, we know that this has become a major pain point for so many of the individuals that are applying for their licenses. There's a limited amount of real estate available and also a lack of access to capital. The other area that we have observed has been a challenge for a lot of the applicants is local zoning controls, local land use, local licensing requirements as well. And so what we want to do here at EDA is that we're looking to just provide access to capital. We are not the regulators. We are the folks that are trying to figure out the best way to get resources into the hands of those businesses in cannabis that truly need it. Next slide. So what did we end up doing? With a $10 million appropriation from the state, we are able to launch 2 new products. The first one is joint ventures. That is a product up to $250,000. This targets entities that are further along in their licensing process, but still have been carrying significant carrying costs. This requires a conditional or annual license, and you also have to have secured real estate and municipal approval. As a pilot, we are only going to award 24 awards. This is open to all applicants, again, that have a conditional or annual license. There will be a 40% set aside for social equity applicants and 5% for impact zones. The next product that we have coming down the market, not just yet, but it's soon coming, is the Seed Equity Program. This is a grant up to $150,000. This requires a conditional license, and this targets entities that have a conditional license, want to obtain their annual, but need more assistance to progress to their annual application. This will also have an award pool of 24 candidates, and there will also be a requirement to have an EDA technical assistance training program that'll be mandatory. This program is open only to social equity candidates, and then there's also a 5% set aside for impact zones as well. Next slide. So what exactly is joint ventures? And you have to love the name joint ventures. As I said before, this is a grant award, and a grant that's huge for $250,000 per grantee. Again, this requires entity to have site control and municipal approval. $100,000 will be dispersed upon proof of obtaining site control, and this can be evidenced by a bill of sale, deed, fully executed lease, or other agreements showing the control of a property for use as a cannabis facility. And also the requirement is municipal approval. Letters of intent or binding letters of intent will not constitute as proof of site control for this particular program. The remaining balance of $150,000 will be dispersed upon approval of the annual license. Applicants, of course, must show receipts of eligible expenses, and they have to be eligible and approved by EDA. Next slide. The next one I'm going to do a little bit more detail about is the Seed Equity Fund. Again, this is going to be the second product that launches from EDA as we stand up our cannabis portfolio. This is a grant up to $150,000. It also requires technical assistance. The tranches will be dispersed at $37,500 4 times with 4 different benchmarks that you're going to have to reach in order to be eligible for this program to have your funds released. Next slide, please. What are the eligible uses? So eligible uses may include, but are not limited to, startup costs associated with the cannabis industry business. This includes rental, mortgage expenses, your payroll wages, regulatory compliance, that's very broad, legal expenses, professional services, employee training, utilities, employee wages, business supplies, and equipment. Again, all uses and documentation are subject to NJEDA approval But again, because this is a new field, because there are so many nuances with this field, we wanted to make the funding as flexible as possible. Next slide, please. Ineligible uses. You cannot use this for controlled inventory, construction, equipment installation costs greater than $2,000, rolling stock, purchase of land, demolition of an existing structure. And again, everything is subject to EDA's approval. Next slide. So what are the fees for this grant of up to $250,000? The application fee is $1,000. There will be a fee waiver for the seed equity applicant businesses that are applying for product 2. That one is not live just yet. For joint venture applicant businesses, there will be an application eligibility review, and then an application fee will only be required upon grant approval. Next slide, please. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague and partner in good, John, who has been toiling in the field and knows more about cannabis, I think, right now than anybody else in New Jersey. So glad to turn it over to my colleague, John Costello.
Well, thank you, Ty. And I'm proud to be part of this team, this great team at the NJEDA, being led by Ty Cooper, to make New Jersey stronger, fairer, and greener. So how do you prepare? So this listing is a short, detailed, but not fully comprehensive list of everything that you're going to need to apply. So we're going to cover the main points with this list and then go over details of the application later on. But we're looking to help prepare everybody for their application. So to start, what are you going to need? Contact information, your name and primary contact information. Who from your firm is going to be that primary person to receive and transmit information back and forth on this application. The second, the applicant entity. So the actual corporation itself will be the applicant. So we'll need application information there. So corporate name, what type of entity are you as a corporation? C Corp, S Corp, LLC, partnership. The date established. Again, contact information for the company if it's going to be different than the point of contact. Your formation documents. We're going to need copies of your articles of incorporation. We're going to need your federal EIN number, your New Jersey tax ID number, and your New Jersey tax clearance certificate. That is from the Department of Taxation, and we'll be going through how you can get a hold of that. You're going to need information around program eligibility. So you're going to need a couple things. The most important being a copy of your conditional or annual license from the commission. We're going to need documentation around your labor or your whatever payroll documentation you have, if you have active employees at the time of application. We're going to need information about the ownership, all the owners in the group, their names, their addresses, as well as some other things. We're going to need proofs of their business or management experience, which we'll be going into in the application, proof of any, and then proof of their education, be it cannabis education, traditional college or undergrad, or other applicable business education. So last but not least, we're going to be needing documentation around the project itself. We're going to need proof of site control. And like Ty said, it's going to be a deed, a mortgage, loan documentation showing that the group has occupation site control. We're going to need a copy of their municipal government approvals, both from the governing body and the spending plan that shows their budget, if they're going to use a budget, or if copies of fees to be reimbursed. Last but not least, we're going to need some additional information that may be helpful to the company. Know your social equity status if you have information on that. Know if your project's going to be an impact zone. And last but not least, your New Jersey business registration certificate. We're going to need that. So next page, please. Post application. We will be contacting you by email. So make sure that when you put in that contact information, that email is going to go to the person who is responsible for your application. If the EGA determines that you are likely eligible, you'll receive instructions on how to pay your application fee. Remember, so if you're likely eligible, you'll receive instructions on how to pay the fee. It is recommended you pay the fee as soon as possible, and it'll only be accepted via credit card. If we determine that you are more than likely not eligible, you'll receive an email recommending that you do not pay the fee. If you proceed and your application is declined, you will not be refunded. Next slide, please. Sample application. So the answers to the homework. This is a copy of our application. There, we are still refining it with our partners across the board of New Jersey government, as well as internally at EDA. But we wanted to give you a quick, look at what it's going to be and how we're going to be looking at it. First page, simple, open, describes what the program looks like, describes the basic eligibility criteria. Next slide, please. The point of contact information, like we said, make sure that the email address that you put into this point of contact information is the email address for the key person who is going to be the primary point of contact for here. Please make sure that it's all right, that it's not that you have your that you have the spelling right, and that you have everything else right with that email address. Otherwise, we may not be able to contact you. Next slide, please. The organization information. We're going to need the organizational name. If you're a DBA, if you're doing business as, we're going to need that. We're going to need to know the entity type. Are you a C Corp? Are you an S Corp? Are you an LLP? Are you a partnership? Are you a sole proprietor? That's going to be important. Also, we're going to need to know the date that it was established. So when did your company start operations? We're going to need to have that in there because that is important. Per our legislative statute, eligibility is only for companies that began operations after March 9th, 2020. March 9th, 2020. Next slide, please. We're going to need to have your corporate mailing address, as well as the state of formation, and then have those formation documents ready to go. As you can see, your trade name, your LLC, or your certificates of incorporation, we are going to need those. So make sure you have those ready to go in a PDF file on the day of application. Next slide, please. We're going to need the FEIN and your New Jersey tax number. We're going to need your primary phone number as well as the website. Next, we're going to need that short paragraph that describes your company. Tell us a little bit about yourself so we know where you're coming from. This is it doesn't have to be long, but it will help. The first big official document, your tax clearance certificate. Tax clearance certificate is a document issued by the New Jersey Department of Treasury, Division of Taxation, that says that you're free and clear of all tax obligations for in the last 180 days. You're able to access it multiple ways, but the easiest one is through the Premier Business Services portal. There's going to be a link in the application. There's also links to this on the NJEDA website, njeda.gov, as well as on the cannabis specific page for this, which is Cannabis, which is njeda.gov/cannabis. So make sure njeda.gov/cannabis will be able to get you that business registration certificate and links to Premier Business Services. Next slide, please. We need to ask a couple questions around background. Does your company have any religious affiliations? Has your company received NJEDA assistance? If it has received NJEDA assistance, what was that assistance? Knowing that, it's going to help you finish your application in a quick and thorough manner. Next slide, please. A little bit about program eligibility. First question, is the program located in the state of New Jersey? If your project is not located in the state of New Jersey, you are not eligible. Your project must be located in the state of New Jersey to be eligible for this project. We're going to ask for your project location. We're going to ask for the lot and block. Then we're also going to ask for your license information. So make sure that you have your license information ready to go that you can upload. We are going to ask a question around ATCs. ATCs that have converted to recreational use are not eligible for this program. Next slide, please. We're going to ask for uploads on those licenses. So like I said, second big document to have ready to go. Tax clearance certificate is first. Second one is have your license ready to go or a copy of your license ready to go in a PDF so you can upload. Third, we need to ask when you commenced operations. So when did you commence operations? And businesses that commenced operations before March 9th, 2020 are not eligible. Anything that started after March 9th, 2020 is an eligible business. Second big question that we have, does your company have more than 50 employees? We're going to be, this is going to be a modification, but we just need to know, as of the date of application, do you have 50 do you have 50 or more full-time employees? And we're just going to need to know your employee count for full-time employees. If you have no employees, put that down. If you have more than, if you have 1 to 50 employees, put that down. Put down what you have. However, the grant is limited to companies with 50 full-time employees or less. Now, we're going to be asking for an input, and then we're going to be following up with verification with some of our state partners. Next slide, please. Ownership. We're going to need ownership information on the entire ownership group coming through. We're going to need to know some information about them, name, address, contact information, as well as their percentage of ownership and how they are categorized. Are they an individual, a company, a trust, like that? Next slide, please. With that owner information, we're going to need to know, we're going to drill down a little bit into the owners. We're going to need to know a little bit about their experience and their education. So the first thing we're going to ask about the different owners and ownership groups is what kind of entrepreneurship experience do they have? So any kind of entrepreneurship experience, founding one business within any of the 50 states in the United States counts. Have information about that. Have evidence to show if that owner has founded a company. We're going to need to have that. As if the owner hasn't founded a company, do they have experience in management? We're going to need to detail that management experience through self-identification on the form, as well as information uploads like a resume, like work documentation, to show that they have some level of management, executive, supervisory, or business leadership experience. So we're going to need to see that, and then we're going to verify that as well. The other part of the verification is going to be education, to help make sure that we have a mature and stable business team that's going to be running these great cannabis enterprises. We need to make sure that there's a level of education, and we understand that education looks different for different people. So therefore, we have multiple options for education. The first one, any kind of cannabis training or education, if you're able to prove that. The second one, traditional higher education credits in things like business, management, finance, agriculture, and accounting, things that you would need to run a successful cannabis business. Third, business training. Have you had business training outside of a traditional context, such as a small business entrepreneurship training course? Evidence of that is going to be big. And then last but not least, actual on-the-job experience. If you're able to prove an additional 3 years of business leadership experience as an owner, supervisor, manager, team lead of a business, we're going to take that too. We'll verify it as well. But you will need to provide evidence of that in terms of a resume, work history, documentation. That's it. We have information on that both in the application, at the cannabis website, so njeda.gov/cannabis, and then as well as on our FAQs in that on the page there. Next slide, please. We're going to need to see site control. So evidence of site control. Does the firm applying have control of the project location? So what are we going to need for that? We're going to need documentation like deed, a mortgage, lease that's been fully executed, or other types of documentation that show full control. Again, letters of intent and binding letters of intent do not satisfy this requirement. So you will need to have documentation, deeds, mortgage, leases that show that the applying entity has control of their project site. The second thing we're going to need is we're going to need proof of that municipal support. We really believe in working with our local partners to make sure that the cannabis industry is strong, safe, and equitable. And so part of that is making sure that they have the approval of the host community. So we're going to need to see documentation from the municipality, usually a council resolution, to show that they have the governmental approval, and you're going to have to upload that. Additionally, you're going to have to show proof of zoning and land use. So we're going to need to have several pieces of additional municipal documentation to show land use control. What's that going to be? We're going to need to see a copy of the ordinance allowing cannabis businesses. We're going to need to see a copy of the zoning map showing the zoning overlay that allows cannabis businesses. Additionally, if there was any other documentation that was required, like zoning permits, resolutions from the land use board or zoning board, we're going to need to have those uploaded as well. Next slide, please. We also want to identify businesses that are going to be coming into this market and have been impacted by the war on drugs. We want to make sure that those entrepreneurs and those communities that were impacted reap the benefits of legalization. So one of the things we want to know is, and this is a totally voluntary question, if you wish to acknowledge that you have received a social equity designation, please do so. This is totally voluntary, and with this designation, it will help the businesses that do apply, as we have the 40% award. 40% of all awards are designated for social equity businesses. So once again, voluntary identification as a social equity business, please let us know, yes or no. Second thing is the impact zone communities. Those communities that were the most impacted, please let us know if you're going to be locating your project in one of those. It's a yes/no question, and we'll be going from there. Third thing is that is your project location revitalizing a COVID impacted community or COVID impacted project? Let us know. Check that box there. Next slide, please. EDA as an agency is dedicated to DE&I. We want to make sure that diversity, equity, and inclusion drive a lot of our decisions. We need to make sure that we're able to craft programs to hit populations and to hit business owners and that have been impacted, and to make sure that we have equity as a built into them. Identification of who is using our products is a big help. Answering these questions regarding any self-identification statuses, regarding any enterprise identification status that your business has, and then what your team looks like. And in terms of management, the diversity of your management team is a great help to us. And we ask you to answer these questions around and help us make a more equitable product, both now and in the future. Next slide, please. Applicant representation. Who is filling this out? We need to know who. We need to get some more identification information on the individual that's doing the application, and so we're going to need this. It's going to be is the individual filling out able to do this? So we're going to need them to identify their status within the company. Next slide, please. The legal questionnaire. The applicant will need to fill out a legal questionnaire. This is multiple pages around the background for around any questions about an applicant's previous contacts with the justice system. This program is designed to work in conjunction with the CRC's work around new concepts in how we are looking at previous convictions for cannabis. Please make sure that the company and the individuals answer this to the best of their ability, and so that we can make a full and complete analysis. We've been working with our partners at CRC as well as in the industry to make sure that this is an equitable program that's that can accept people that were impacted by the war on drugs and now can work in the now legal cannabis industry. We want to make sure that this happens, but we do have requirements. These requirements are listed up here as part of our legal questionnaire, so we need to fill that out. Next slide, please. Disclosure of social equity status. Again, what we need to do is to verify that social equity status and good standing with the Cannabis Regulatory Commission. We at EDA, as part of our requirements, we have to make sure that businesses are in good standing with our partners and partner agencies. This allows us to both ask the question if somebody has self-identified as a cannabis business, and only if they've self-identified as a cannabis business will we be able to go check with our partners at CRC to see if they're if they are listed as a cannabis business. The other thing we'll check it that they're in good standing, which means that they are able to proceed with their license according to CRC. No information. CRC will be giving us only those answers as to the standing and of a social equity status and as to the standing of your license. No other information is going to be released from CRC. Next slide, please. Fee acknowledgement, like we said, if you get an email similar to this, you will be getting something similar to this regarding the fee information. You will be getting a second separate email should you move forward and meet both the completeness and eligibility criteria and are one of the first 24. Again, the program, like Ty said, is first in, first out. And if you, there will be a $1,000 fee after the review for eligibility and completeness. Next slide, please. We'd like to streamline the program, make sure everything's done electronically. We will be using electronic signatures. Will be an example that looks like this, and we look to finalize the program with this next slide. All right, the last slide of the program. This slide is our application submission. If you see this, you know that you've fully and successfully completed our Cannabis Equity Joint Ventures Grant application. You should be getting an email that will confirm this, and this finishes the presentation for today. I know we covered a lot. Again, I can't emphasize this enough. NJEDA.gov/cannabis. We have multiple resources on there on how to access documentation, as well as FAQs. The copies of this presentation will be on there. And last but not least, at the back of this presentation, we have multiple ways to contact us at the NJEDA, and then also to work with our partners across state government to help move forward different cannabis resources. Thank you again, and I look forward to answering any of your questions. Have a good night. Thank you.